When it comes to Circuit Villeneuve, names are made here. It is the track Villeneuve himself won at in the 1970s, where he was the first ever Canadian to win the Canadian Grand Prix. Names such as Schumacher and Hamilton have won here in recent years. And now, drivers are all set for the chance to let their name heard and let their name be made here today, here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Circuit Villeneuve in Montreal, Quebec. The Global SimRacing Channel is proud to bring you coverage of the Dutchies-Esports F3 Masters of Canada. Some of the best F3 drivers are all set to go here in Montreal. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight is Johan van den Beld. With behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose. He's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. It's a track that has been very challenging for drivers in the past. Let's take a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Circuit Villeneuve.
Alright, we're in the GSRC Formula 3, so let's do a lap around Montreal. The Senna S is a very tricky first set of corners. While passing is possible, if you take it in too deep, you'll severely compromise your line through the hairpin portion. Try to get back on the power, but be careful because the momentum of the rear could swing it the rest of the way around, sending you into the wall to the right. After this is 3 and 4. This is an underrated corner because it really forces you to get close to that outside barrier if you want to be fast. Then there's the flat out turn 5 where you want to hug the right side. That's because that's where you want to be for the racing line and braking into 6. Sometimes drivers might try passes into here, but it's surprisingly difficult to get it done. Honestly, it's important to ensure you get a good run off of 7 since it takes you onto the riverside stretch. Drivers are likely to try and set up an overtake if they think they've got a run on you. Under the bridge, you'll slam on the brakes and swing it into 8 and 9. Avoid climbing the tall white curb so that you can confidently reapply the power. Once again, make sure you don't send the car careening into the wall. Finally, we've got the only braking zone that isn't into a chicane, Le Pingle. That'll make everyone hungry to try and make a pass into here, but the bigger danger is getting onto the throttle too heavily and spinning the car around. There's good reason to try and push the limit with that too, because you're now flying along the rowing lake. This backstretch is the longest acceleration zone on the track and offers your best chance to get past your opponent. It culminates at the braking for the final chicane, which leads you into the notorious Wall of Champions. Respect the curbs, be careful not to smack the wall, and hopefully as you take it to the line, you've now finished a lap around Montreal.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Circuit Villeneuve. Now let's bring my broadcast partner in Johan van den Beld. This is a track that is very challenging as hit upon in the track guide. What else can you tell us about this track today?
Yeah, it's a very challenging track for sure. Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, we already heard about it in your intro, Justin. We saw the track guide. It's a 4.3 kilometer track. That's probably synonymous for most people with racing in Canada. Located across 2 islands in the St. Lawrence River, this location was used for the first time during the Summer Olympics of 1976. But after that, Formula 1 has adopted it as its Canadian home and has hosted Grand Prix over 30 times. Now, for me personally, this track has always been synonymous with the walls around it. Hey, you have the turn 4 chicane, you have the fast exit of turn 7, and the hairpin at turn 10. All have seen big names end their races in those concrete barriers, but the most famous of them all is the one in the final chicane, the lovingly called Wall of Champions, where drivers like Hill, Schumacher and Villeneuve have all seen their races destroyed. If you look at overtaking opportunities here at Montreal, I think there's 3 big ones. It's in turn 1, it's going into the hairpin, and it's going into the final chicane. But if you're very courageous and you're close behind your competitors through quote-unquote the infield section, you might profit from the other car making a mistake and not using the apexes fully, so watch out for that. In other words, it is going to be a very challenging track for the drivers today. I hope they're in for their 1 hour race. But before we go to qualifying and see where things stand, Justin, how about we see how the race details look?
Yes, indeed. These are the details right here. 60 minutes is the race total for today. They're all in fixed setup, so the same exact setup as 1 hour. But only 80% fuel, so that puts them in a window where they will have to take a pit stop on the fuel. One fast repair is available if they are involved in an incident. There is an incident limit of 35 incident points here for the full hour of racing. Oh, and by the way, there are cash prizes for today's F3 Masters of Canada. €70 goes to the winner today. €40 to second place on the podium, Third step on the podium is 15 euros today. Drivers had an entry fee of 6 euros to enter today's race. And it's a very stacked group of drivers, mind you, today. 37 entrants registered for today's race, many of which showed great speed in the last organized race by Dutchies-Esports, but also some of the best F3 drivers in all of iRacing from the European side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that is, well, really standing out for me, you can see him on top of the screen on the left side, Paul Eelbrink. He is one of the drivers that's currently driving through the pits, maybe getting some tires, maybe practicing his pit stop there. That has really shown a lot of skill in the previous race that they hosted at Zandvoort, but also in practice where he set the fastest qualifying time, and here in qualifying. You can see his quickest lap time at the moment is a 1:31.2. Everyone else is at least 1.5 tenths off him. In practice, though, he was even further off from the rest. He did a 1:31.7. So far, it seems like there's one driver to beat, and that's the number 10 car of Paul Eelbrink.
As you can tell, qualifying is underway, 30 minutes total open qualifying, so this allows drivers the opportunity, say, to work with a teammate. That's the case now with Eelbrink working on the back end of the 69. That, once again, is Derry Roots that he's trying to work with at the moment, who's currently in 14th. We've seen this a couple times where you give the draft to somebody, there's the slingshot right there. This will give the draft now to the 69 for his qualifying lap here.
Yeah, and I think especially for Danny, it will be useful to have a little bit of a draft. He's currently sitting right in the middle of the order in P14, so it will be beneficial for Danny Raats to get even a whiff of draft. That will be enough for him to win a few positions, because you mentioned before, Justin, it is so packed in the field. If Danny Raats, for example, would win only 1/10 of a second, he would immediately elevate himself 3 positions. So especially in the midfield, it is really stacked, and we can see him now getting closer and closer to the car in front of him. He will really like that draft, and he will get on the start-finish straight.
That is the best drafting section in the entire racetrack. Let's see how the time fares for the 69. Danny Raats this time across the stripe, going to come away with a 1:40. That is 8/10 seconds off at the moment, so likely going to pick up pace this time. However, they do also have to deal with cars coming out of the pit lane. Now, mind you, this track is a one with a lot of drafting zones, especially down the Casino Straight, the best passing opportunity on the racetrack, all the way up to 13-14 where the World of Champions is. There's also specifically other straightaways here today where you can get some good draft. If you don't have that, it can be pretty tricky to try and set up some moves today.
Yeah, and especially because I'm still a little bit worried about the ability for cars to overtake. You have drafting, you have good overtaking opportunities, but you have to set yourself up. And it's not like you have really long continuous sections of draft which allow you to make an overtake easily. You really have to be a lot better in a few corners in a row to put yourself closely to someone else, or the person in front of you has to make a big mistake to allow you to get that overtake. So qualifying will be important for the people. I just see a quicker lap time for one of the drivers. I think that was Jim Hertroys, who put himself in P4, 1:31.6. So he's currently sitting himself on row 2 of the grid. He's sharing that one with Niels Langeveld. Maybe we can put the focus on Niels for one moment. That's car number 17. He is sitting now on the inside of row number 2, like I just said, shared with Jim Hertroys. But he is putting in a new qualifying time. He has to win 2/10 of a second to put himself next to Tom Walstra. We could have also put the camera on him, but he's currently sitting in the pits, probably taking a little rest, because it will be an exhausting race as well, though, Justin. It's 1 hour. The drivers will have to be fully focused for that 1 hour straight, because one tiny mistake, you're in the barrier. So a little break for Tom Walstra before we go to green.
Now, to keep an eye on where your favorite drivers are on the grid, you can go to GSRC.tv to keep up with all the live timing and scoring for today's event. Once again, GSRC.tv to keep up with the timing and scoring. To keep up with where your favorite drivers are in qualifying. With that timing, you can keep track of, again, the top time, 1:31.2, set by Eelbrink. Right now, the slowest time currently set by the 35th qualifier out of 35 drivers who are currently in session. Right now, that's the 97s of Han Verhey. That is 35th in the 97 with a 1:35.418. Weather conditions are also going to be interesting. We're talking about this before the start of today, where it's currently a late afternoon start, where it is approximately about 5:30-ish in sim time. Track temp is 77 degrees, air temp 67, fairly cool. but it's going to get interesting throughout that hour how the track progresses today here.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to convert that, that's 20 degrees Celsius ambient temperature, 25 degrees Celsius track temperature for these European drivers. And the time in session is quite late in the afternoon. It's at the moment 5:15 in the afternoon. That means that the sun is only going to drop lower and lower. That means that the temperatures are only going to drop lower and lower. And that means for the drivers that they'll probably have more and more grip as the race progresses. And that might be a good thing for us viewers as well, because more grip basically means that the drivers will go faster, but also will be able to follow each other a bit better.
Taking a look at one of the top qualifiers so far, this is one of the Dutchies-Esports machines. Check that, that's one of the tulip racing machines driving around and making contact. That is somebody who came out of the pit lane, ran over. This is one of the Dutchies cars specifically, believe here, in fact, here, yes indeed. That beautiful paint scheme as they try and let them hear everyone roar today. Right now, that tank graph who is currently in P6 in qualifying so far. The Dutchies cars have worked together really well in this session to try and make sure they're in the top half of the grid and have track position, because one of the main things off the start here, Johan, with this track and its history on the iRacing service, big crashes in turn 1.
Yeah, let's hope these drivers will be spared from that, especially because it's a 1 hour race. So maybe the drivers will be a little bit calmer because of that. They, of course, have one fast repair waiting, but if you take that fast repair, that's basically your chances shot for any of those cash prizes. How about we put the camera on car 28 a little bit? Sam Kuitert, he's coming through the final corner now. Let's see if he actually can put a quicker lap time than he currently has. He had a 1:31.8. I think he's actually starting a new lap time now. He's one of the drivers that we didn't put any attention on yet. And you can see he's not one of the Dutchies drivers. Maybe is what? Let's just ride a little bit with him as he's going to the first chicane. 1:31.8 at the moment. He is just in front of Stijn Handke behind him, 100th of a second. He has to find 2/10 this lap, Justin, to elevate himself to P4.
And that's without draft at the moment. Ran a 1:31.7 in practice and having to maneuver multiple drivers who are not having fun times. On the bright side, just up the road, you might be able to see just a touch of Martin Beers. Might be able to get the draft off him in the best drafting section of the racetrack to try and get a best time. Just inside a bit of the turtles, though, that time, going through 8 and 9.
Going to the hairpin. Now this is one of the corners where you want to have a fantastic exit, because that will mean that you get a lot of speed onto the final straight towards the chicane. It seems like Sam is quite good there, quite smooth, and this is him going over Casino Straight. You can see him shifting up to 5th gear. No draft in front of him. The car in front of him is Martin Beers, but I think it's too far to be given any bit of draft. Going to 6th gear. Now looking on the left hand side. Find your braking marker to shoot yourself through the chicane, past the wall of champions. Clubbers the left curbs a little bit, and there he has a slight bit of oversteer. That will not help Sam Kuitert. He stays all the way on the right hand side to limit the amount of track that he has to cover. He goes quicker though, 1:31.6. He wins 1 position, but he stays in P5 because in the meantime Jim Hertroys put it at 1:31.5 and he went to P3 with that.
With qualifying, is there a sweet spot when it comes to the tires as well, in your opinion?
To be honest, at this point, with so many drivers, you always have the opportunity of a driver in front making a mistake. So instead of putting a lot of small stints as a driver, at this point, I would just go out, maybe a little bit more fuel than you normally would, but just drive, continue to drive, and just wait for that opportunity so you can get a clean lap. Of course, it might not be optimal that way, but that way you're at least ensured that you get at least 1 clean lap, and that should give you a good qualifying spot.
This is Jim Hartroy's currently trying to drive his way up past 3rd position in the WeCapture.nl machine. How will Jim do on this lap? 1:34.9 last time by, his quickest time of 1:31.5. Trying to use as much time on the straight. 1:31.458. That improves his time. Not enough though to move him up to the front row for the starting grid.
Behind him, Niels Langeveld is coming over start finish. That's car number 17. He puts in a 1:32.5, so that actually means that Jim Hertroys at the moment seems safe for from the drivers behind him. You can see that on the left side of the screen there's a slight gap forming between P3 and P4, 1.5 tenths between them. And I think that Jim, Tom and Paul will be fighting for the podium positions or at least top content.
Right now, Paul's still getting some practice laps in. 1:31.9s on his own at the moment. No help with draft. While others are still trying to make their way around the racetrack in the 134s and 133s. 18th. This is one of the Dutchies machines across the stripe. Not an improvement there. Dave Guild coming across the stripe this time in the 98. One of the two-up racing machines as well. A 132.558 doesn't improve his time. So drivers try to set their last times. They have now about 2 minutes or so to complete their current laps. Then qualifying is over. Currently, half the field is still on the racetrack, able to set times, including the man in 5th position, the 28th, right now, currently on the second half of the racetrack. Currently following along with the 25th place car, though. Again, one of the two-up machines, trying to work his way across the stripe. Miser trying to make his way across the stripe, 132.867, 134, not able to improve it. So in our words, most drivers, if they've already put in a time, likely going to be sticking with that set time as their quickest way around the track.
Yeah, I don't think there will be a lot of movement. We see Niels Langeveld completing his final lap. Doesn't go quicker. Let's go to Sam Kuijten though, car number 28, because he's going through the final chicane. He's right behind Maarten Beers in the Marlboro livery there. Maarten Beers will not go quicker. Let's keep an eye on it. Doesn't seem like it. Sam Kuijten behind him also doesn't go quicker. Really close though. Got everything out of the car. 100 slower than his quickest qualifying time.
And Paul Ilbrink, with a couple of 131.9s, then flex his muscles with a draft of the last cars across the stripe with a 131.1 to finish up qualifying. 50 seconds until we hit the starting grid for today. Your thoughts before we get things going in these cars line up for what should be a thrilling race today?
I'm really curious for that turn one. You mentioned before there's a big chance of a crash. It's a short run to it, and the drivers will have to brake very hard to go to a single foul racing. I hope they can keep it clean. It's going to be a long race, and watch out for Paul Ilbrink, who has Tom and Jim right on his tail for the podium positions. I think they're the top contenders.
Who are some of the underdogs in your opinion here?
Looking at the practice times, maybe one of the drivers like Joey Alders, who's currently sitting in P10. He didn't set a quicker qualifying time than he was in practice, so maybe that's one of the drivers that can just improve himself in the race if he just digs down and makes a few overtakes when it's possible.
With that, drivers now ready to roll their cars onto the starting grid at the Circuit Jovunu. This will be how they will start today. Paul Ilbrink setting the pole time today with a 131.175 in qualifying. Tom Wallstrom will start in second. Jim Hartroy starts in third today with a 131.458 with Niels Langeveld in P4. Rounding up the top 5 starting positions, it is Stra in P8. Warren Brawlers starts in 9th with Joey Alders rounding up the top 10 today, Johan.
P11 goes to Cheryl Yalving, and he shares row number 6 with Dave Guild. Tom Vos starts in P13, flanked by Neil Hekkens. Danny Raad starts in P15, followed by Yuri Gamelkorn. Koen Jansen starts in 17, followed by Sander Nachtegaal. And Martijn Versleeuwen rounds out the top 20, together with Perry Oosterveer.
Rounding out the top 21 starting positions, that is Kirsten Van Eyck. That starts in 21st. Starting in 22nd position today in the number 5 car. Once again, it will be Messel Den Hardik. Oscar Vilkins starts in 23rd position. Peter Van Hal starts in 24th, with Fabian Bolmeiser starting in P number 25. Martin Beer starts 26th. Larry Devon, Larry DeLon starts in P27. Mike Lute starts 28th. Rounding out the top 28 positions today, Keith Drost. 30th position goes to David Omisi. That rounds out the top 30. With that, it is Barry Engelhoven starting alongside Johan Dors, along with Donas Plateo. Davy Ritzma rounds out the top 34. Rounding out the drivers today is Han Verheij. Those are the 35 drivers on the starting start for today. All 35 cars have made their way to the grid. Green lights are waiting. Engines are revving. We're underway from Montreal. And a great start by Ilbrink. Already the battle on for second position. Everyone rumbling their way 2-3 wide into turns 1 and 2 through the Barrage Center. Clean start for the entire field. Everyone's made it through.
Yeah, only in the back of the field there's one small contact, but I think he can continue all single file going to the first chicane with Martin Brouwer side by side with Danny Hoekstra, and they make contact. Both cars locking into each other, and this will bring out a big accident. All the drivers are tumbling into each other, and this is reminiscent of Spa 1998 with a lot of drivers who wreck their car and have to come in for the fast repair.
Only about the top 8 made it through. 13th on back piled in. You can see a massive track blocker. No safety car triggered. This is half the field who got stuck. However, Ilbrink, Wallstraw, and the rest of the group were able to make it on through nice and cleanly for the start. This is now the top 10 separated by just about 4 seconds.
Better for P5. Better for P4 into the hairpin. Some counters putting the pressure on Niels Langeveld. Tried it around the outside. No cigar yet for Sam Kuitert, who's now very close over the Casino Straight, running him down, and this is where the draft fits in. Niels covers the inside, Sam tries to goes there, double move it almost seems. Now Sam Kuitert is forced to go around the outside, but he didn't have to drive anymore to put his car side by side.
Electing to keep it single file to the wall of champions. End of the first lap, estimated 40 laps the distance, 1 hour. Here comes the slipstream. Once again, the 28 trying to make the pass now work on the high side, the very high side. The non-existent line having to take the shortcut and have to take a time penalty. That will lose all the track position now for the 28.
And especially in the first lap, when time penalties are even more extreme than later in the race, some guys will fall down the order a little bit more. This means that there will be a little bit of less pressure for Niels Langeveld. I wanted to say, but Stijn Handgraaf is right behind him, taking over the pressure that Kuitert had a few moments ago. In the meantime, Jim, Tom and Paul can all streak away, it seems like, in the top positions. They are increasing the gap from the podium to P4.
Of note, with that incident that happened on the first lap, about 24th on back has had to come in for fast repairs. Everyone else has been able to keep on going on the track. Currently, the top 3 have broken off and away by about 2 seconds separation amongst them. Then the interesting part is going to get 4th on back again. That's where Langeveld is still holding on for the time being, but that's 24 machine is closing on in once again. That's one of the Dutchies-Esports machines inside the draft and trying to break away from Spork. See on board, just able to close in a little bit. Broken slipstream on the bottom right side of the racetrack. That time to break it up a little bit.
Now how about we take, while this is all going on, a look at the replay of that incident in lap 1 that took out so many drivers. It basically started with Danny Hoekstra and Martin Brouwers. Those are the 2 drivers side by side here through the first chicane. You can see on the exit, their wheels will tangle with each other. I think it's Martin who just loses control. Hoekstra is getting flung in the wall, and everyone behind him just cannot slow down in time. Or just slows down but gets hit behind. A lot of drivers are forced to take their fast repair already. Luckily, all the drivers seem to be continuing still in the race, Justin, so that's good to see. Paul Ilbrink we currently see on screen. He is now increasing his gap to Tom Wallstra by over a second, so no more draft between those 2 drivers. Wallstra is at the same time driving away from Hedroyce in P3. And even Langeveld, who was under pressure by Sam Kuitert and Stijn Handgraaf, is now slowly driving away. Half a second between himself and P5. Stijn Handgraaf really has to use these moments over the Casino Straight where he has just a little bit of draft to close down the gap to P4.
Yeah, 1 second's the gap. Wallstra quicker last time by 1/10 of a second. But we talked about this a little bit. Dirty air can be a factor with these cars a little bit here, especially at Montreal and some of the closer cars. Not as big as our tracks, but in battles such as this, it still comes up in play sometimes, especially in the apexes of corners.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in the area of the track where they're going to now. That's where you don't want any of the dirty air. Niels Langeveld actually missing the apex of turn 2 there. That will help Stijn Handgraaf a little bit to just close down the gap. But that little bit of dirty air and chicanes like where they're now, that's not where it's helping, because you cannot reach the apexes as you wanted. You cannot go on the throttle as you wanted. Through this corner as well, through the next left-hander where you have to brake very hard and just want to ride all over the curve. All these corners, you just lose all the slight bits of time that add up once you reach the hairpin, and then you can look at a deficit of 2-3 tenths that you might catch up again in the draft. It's not enough to put it side by side.
Yeah, they're not in one of the passing areas quite yet either, as that time a bit of curbing taken by Hongraf this time. Currently coming up towards just past 5 minutes on the clock, mind you, so far. So at this point of the race, it's early on, yes. What do you do as a driver to keep yourself focused on the task at hand, that being trying to make sure you keep on going the right way while also not abusing the tires?
Yeah, absolutely. You just try to settle in, find your rhythm now. Don't worry too much about overtaking positions. Of course, you want to move forward, but don't worry too much and don't put too much effort in that. At the same time, as a driver at this point, I would try to look around. Which drivers are behind me? Oh, it seems like P3 actually made a mistake there. That's Jim Hurtroy's immediately losing a position to Niels there, and actually might lose another position to Stijn Heidgraaf, who is taking a look on the inside, gets by him. So that's not one of the things that you want, that mistake that Jim Hurtroy's just made, because he immediately loses 2 positions. But at this point, you do want to take a look. Which drivers are around me? What kind of lap times are they doing? And where are they strong and where are they weak? And especially those weak points. You want to remember those for later in the race, so you can exploit them and use that to your advantage.
The reason he lost so many positions at one time is he smacked the tires against the wall of champions. No damage in the end, though. Hartroy still keeping him within this lead pack, though, however, did lose him about 2 to 3 seconds overall in track time, because the mistake can also allows Colin Spork now in the Lotus machine to stay within the draft now. Once again, Landveld is in the yellow machine leading the group. Then you have Hongraf currently in the second grouping, Hartroy's, and then Spork in this 4-car train trying to catch up. They've lost about half a second, though, down in Sector 2.
I'm amazed that Jim Hurtroy's actually could continue, because he clubbed the second part of the chicane very hard. That lifted him off the ground and meant that he didn't have the grip to steer himself away from the wall of champions, and that he can continue after a hard hit. He was lucky that it was perpendicular, otherwise he would have lost his right front tire. Doesn't seem to hurt him in speed, though, in the way that he is still able to follow the 2 cars in front of him.
Now remember, this is the new damage model used on iRacing with the Dallara F3 chassis. That's what we've seen a little bit with some of the damage seen from the big one on lap 1. You can break suspensions, tire rods, severe wing breakages. You can break any part of this race car essentially during a run.
Yeah, exactly what you said. We saw that in lap 1 in that huge power-up that we saw. But it also means that during the race, like in the Wall of Champions, way earlier than normal, where you had just a little bit of suspension damage, you can actually knock off a wheel, and that can end your race way earlier. We see Niels actually struggling through the chicane there, missing 2 apexes in a row. That immediately allows Stijn Heidgraaf a move. He's on the outside. That's not the line where you want to be at the moment, but you can make it work if you brake a little bit later. He doesn't brake later, though, and Niels repairs his mistake, stays in front, and this allows Jim Hurtroy to attack Stijn Heidgraaf in front of him. He's now on the outside of the hairpin. That's 180 degrees to the right. It's not where you want to be at that point. You have to brake way later, but he doesn't brake later. It seems like every wing stays the same for now as they go to Casino Straight.
Able to make the pass for the time being. We'll see if they go for the slipstream right back, though. Defensive line once again taken. Hongraf trying to hold on to the right side of the track. Trying to force Hartroy's on the long way around. Will he back off, or will he force the Neonism design car to stick? Yes, indeed, the 24 holds on for the time being to 4th position.
And this is all great news for Langeveld, who can just streak away from P4 like this. Gap has increased by over a second now. And I think that even Colin Spork behind them is thinking like, well, I want to mix into this. I need to get by these guys if I want to have a chance on the podium position and one of those prizes. Hans Verheij coming out of the pits just behind him. He will be a lap car for Joey Alders there as well. He immediately goes off Hans Verheij. That might be a problem for Joey Alders, who is able to get by him.
Most drivers able to keep their cars nice and clean so far. Just about 10 minutes into the clock so far, Estimated distance now is shuffled over to about 32 to go now that we're up to race pace today. With that being said, now with the 80% fuel, still early on in the race, yes, but how do you play the strategy game for this race in terms of if you have to and when you have to pit for fuel?
To be honest, as a driver, I would see where I am on the track. If you're stuck behind drivers, if you cannot pass them, and the driver in front is not making a mistake, that's for me the point that I would say, like, I'm going to the pits now. So for drivers like Ilbrink, Walstra, Langeveld, those drivers are driving in front, they have no one in front of them that is holding them up. They will probably be able to follow the plan that they made for themselves before the race. But the drivers behind, like Handgraaf, like Herders, like Sport, they have to look at the drivers in front of them. If they're being held up, it might be a very good decision for them to go into the pits. And one driver that I wanted to put a little bit of emphasis on is the car in P8 at the moment, Sam Kuijten. We saw him actually make a mistake a few laps ago where he got a slowdown penalty for cutting the track into turn 1. He has been recovering by, well, quite a margin at the moment. He is quicker than all the drivers in front of him until P2. So watch out for Sam Kuijten in the coming 10-20 laps, because he is running down Aldous, Spork and all those drivers in front of him that are battling hard with each other.
Last time by closed in by about 0.4 of a second, was 0.3 quicker than the car in front once again. Does have lap traffic to have to deal with potentially though this lap though. Keep that in mind as he tries to reel in Alders and the rest of that train up the track. Still though plenty of space, that's the bright side at least. At least to try and keep focused. Hearing there may have been something that may have happened in that grouping as well though, unfortunately though. Currently spread apart though for the time being. Currently in Sector 1, the reason the gap broke up a little bit was just a bad run for Hartroyce throughout this entire lap has lost him about a full second nearly.
Yeah, maybe Hartroyce is just pushing a little bit too much. He was in P3, he was actually quite comfortably in P3, but now he's 2 positions behind that, and maybe he's just asking a little bit too much of the car to try and recover the lost ground. One of the things that might play a factor in that as well is that he is under slight pressure of Colin Sport behind him. But like you said, the whole battle for P3, 4 drivers are just strung away from each other like elastic. Let's see if they bounce back once the elastic is released and just bunch up to each other, because there is lap traffic coming in the form of Oscar Wilkins. Meanwhile, let's put the camera on car number 1 a little bit, Paul Ilbrink, because Paul Ilbrink and Walstra are in command of this race at the moment. There's 2.2 seconds between those two drivers, so it's not like Tom Walstra is driving away from or driving towards Paul Ilbrink at this point, but together they are over 5 seconds towards P3, so there's a lot of time between them, and that allows those drivers to just take it easy, especially with lap traffic, with their pit stops. Just be sure that you keep those positions and really consolidate that podium position.
And you gotta remember too, these cars typically get faster the more they burn fuel off in a tank. As well as the fact too of, yes, there's tire wear, but they're only 1/10 of a second, mind you, off of their starting pace. So they are flying on the track. Compare that to some of the others. Some of their fellow competitors have already seen 3 to 5/10 of seconds of fall off. Still though, as this continues to scrap along, few battles are starting to shape out a little bit across the racetrack. We mentioned a bit of that train that's now broken up a little bit. Still in the back part of the field, our group such as De Haas are currently trying to hold on to the counterpart to the race leader of Ilbrink. That's where you may have remember from qualifying, that was where Rats was getting help from the 10 machine. He's all the way back in 24th position. Mind you, these are some of the drivers who were involved in the big one on lap 1 who already had to use a faster pair this race.
Yeah, and it seems like Danny Raats, who's, like you said, in P24, he's the quicker one of these 3. Closing down to Peter de Heus at the moment, but not able to overtake yet. On board with Danny at the moment, you can see beautiful on board this. You can see how he is shifting up, going to 5th gear, going to 6th gear, trying to close down the gap towards the hairpin. Actually see what he actually does for gear choice in this hairpin. He goes to gear number 1, means that you have the most traction there. You have a little bit of wheel spin, but then he's controlling that beautifully. And he's closing down the gap now to Peter de Heus. There's only 2 car lengths between them. It's only going to get less and less and less. And you can see Peter de Heus in the middle of the track trying to choose which way he's going to go. Danny is the one who is actually deciding that he goes to the inside. brakes later. That's a beautiful, clean overtake by Danny Raats, who gets P23 with that.
Might have a chance to go even higher here to 22nd this time by, because Larry just up the road, Larry DeWant, does have wing damage, so he elected not to go to pit and get the wing replaced. So Larry's just trying to chug this out, it looks like, until they can get to the scheduled pit stop window, about 15 minutes or so, give or take minimum. This though is going to lose some time now for the 69, just can't get on by in the corners, but right there, you see the damage for the wing on the front specifically. Loses him a lot of pace in the middle of the corner, and that puts him up for grabs for passes like this.
Wow, what courageous move there from Danny Raats to put it side by side through the twisty section. You can see the car behind of Peter de Huis wanting to join this battle now, because both of them lose a lot of time. Danny is by Larry de Lange, but will Larry de Lange lose another position in turn 7 there on the inside. He doesn't have the speed required to stay in front of Peter de Huis. So like I said, that wing damage, immediately losing 2 positions. But that's all thanks to Danny de Raats, who was very courageous there to keep it side by side through the S's.
So many drivers still trying to keep on going and see what plays out with the rest of the lead cars. By the way, Joey Alders has been reeled in just about by the 28, just outside drafting range. In fact, just up the road a little bit from these competitors. So let's take a look once again. Alders currently up the road by about a second or so, but currently Sam is just about within range to get in the slipstream, especially since you may have noticed the car going wide, lots of traffic coming into play.
Yeah, that's Oscar Bilkens who missed the hairpin there. Oscar actually will give Joey Alders a little bit of draft going over the casino straight, but Sam counted, like you said, half a second quicker last time around, so 1 or 2 laps and Sam will be right on the tail of the car in front. That must be a good feeling for Sam Kuytet. He of course made a mistake at actually that car actually goes straight to the pit, so that will not help Sam or will not hold Sam back going for the infield section. But Kuytet made a mistake at the beginning of the race, but he still has the speed that he had at the beginning, and he's just able to run down the cars in front of him, and that's always a good feeling. Instead of being chased down, you're the chasee, and you're just running those cars down, getting down those distances, and putting on overtaking maneuvers. That just makes you quicker as a driver.
Keep in mind that Alders ran just about 2 tenths slower last time by, has really been hitting the rev limiter at the end of the straightaways as well. Compare that to Sam. Sam hasn't been getting in that same range, as in hitting the top end of the gears.
If we hop forward a few positions, the battle for P5 is heating up as well. Colin Spork is running down Jim Hertroyce, and Colin seems to be quite a bit quicker at this point. Took a look on the inside of turn 7. That's not really a point where you want to overtake, but here through the hairpin, this is one of the overtaking spots that we mentioned on top of the broadcast, where you can put it side by side. He has more speed, but he elects to stay single file. He wants to be right behind Jim there, gets a good exit. Only 2 car lengths between them as they go on to the back straight. This is a great run from Colin Spork. This is probably one of the best chances that he had so far to drive and get that P5 position. And Hertroyce is riding on the wall. He's defending the inside, but he leaves a little gap open there. Colin is forced to the outside. Brakes later though. Are they courageous enough to put it side by side through the final chicane? They are! Colin Spork gets the position, but there's Jim Hertroyce who has more momentum out of that corner and immediately tries to get the take back. On the inside now, going towards turn 1. I don't think Jim Hertroyce will put his car in front of him, but will he be able to brake late enough? He's still side by side as he reaches turn 2, but now he's on the outside and Colin Spork can consolidate that P5 position. He gets that position and is now in the top 5.
What a pass done on that line, going into the wall of champions final chicane, as well as to make it stick in 1 and 2. Behind them and in front, trouble. That's Langeveld. He spun around. The 3rd place car. And now that means Hondgraf is now up into a podium spot as well. The 28 has also moved by Alders. So a bad lap for Langeveld. This is what happened to the 17.
Yeah, just through that chicane, too much. He cuts the inside of the corner too much there. That bounced his car, and you can see immediately that his right rear tire just broke off the car. He tries to get it rolling again because I don't think that he knows that his wheel is broken off. But you can see he just doesn't have any turn in anymore. So he just took the corner way too fast, bumped over the curbstone, and that sent him to the wall. And that means that Niels has to take a fast repair and a tow to continue in this race. Hondgraf to a podium position. And that also means that Colin Spork, instead of winning 1 position, he wins 2 positions in 1 lap.
He's trying to keep those two positions, though. Sport playing aggressive defense. Royce has been really playful with the slipstream. He's been defensive as well, mind you, and he's been the front car. But Spork, quicker off the corner, runs off and away. Do you think that's a little bit of the damage may have been kicking in a little bit for the two? Remember, he was the car who hit the wall of champions from third position about 5-10 laps ago.
Absolutely could be. It could also just be that maybe Jim Hurtroyce is not feeling the car as much as it did at the beginning of the race. We mentioned that top temperatures are still decreasing, 24 degrees track temperature at the moment. That is in Celsius. So the track is decreasing in temperature. That might also mean that the handling of the car is a little bit different. And Jim is just not as comfortable as he was at the beginning of the race.
Weather conditions at the top of the screen, you just seen them there. Weather is set to constant for these drivers, but they do have a dynamic sky in regards to the clouds above the circuit throughout this race today. Still, though, we'll have to see how the battles play out. Remember, Sam Coulthard is closing on in as well for a chance to steal away a top 5 run after he made that mistake, remember, in 1 and 2 early on in the clock. Only about 10 car lengths or so now back of these two.
Yeah, and especially Coulthard, he has been the quick one of the 3 cars in front of him as well. With the mistake of Niels earlier and him crashing out, that means that instead of like 10 seconds behind the podium position, he's now 5 seconds behind the podium position. And Sam Coulthard will look at the cars in front of him with a big smile on his face, because last time around he was half a second quicker. And if Jim and Colin keep battling with each other or putting pressure on each other, that will only help Sam Coulthard. In the meantime, it does seem like Jim Hurtroyce doesn't have the speed anymore, and he's just dropping further and further away from Colin in front.
Of note, a lot of drivers had to come down for first or second scheduled pit stops amongst some of the damaged cars who had not elected to take fast repairs. Those were the guys who were around 15th through 20th of note on the racetrack. So about half the field has had to come in for unscheduled stops or for an undercut stop in this window. Amongst the drivers who have not come in for scheduled stops, as talked about, are these drivers. Rats is now up to about 16th position with the cycling. The grouping has also been spread out apart just a little bit compared to the 4-car train we've seen about 5 laps ago. Your thoughts so far on the action here, Johan?
I mean, I'm impressed by some of the drivers on top of the race. Ilbrink, Walstra driving away, and especially Walstra, who seems to be just more and more content with how the race is going. Because a few laps ago, we looked at him and the gap was around 2.5 seconds. So you can see on top of the screen, only 1.7 seconds now. So Tom Walstra seems to be quick. Last time around, he did a 131.8. Ilbrink, a 132.1. So 0.3 of a second he won. It seems like, again, he's just slightly quicker than Paul Ilbrink. So once the fuel levels are going down, Tom Walstra seems very, very quick. And maybe the fact that Paul, especially a little bit of lap traffic as well in front of Paul, that will not help him. So the writing on the wall that we saw maybe at the beginning of the broadcast where Paul Ilbrink seemed unbeatable might not be Senate paper. Maybe it's just pencil writing that can be erased away, because Tom Walstra is closing the gap.
See if that indeed becomes just pencil writing that can be used with an eraser to scrub off and away, especially since there's the lap car that just scrubbed the speed off of Ilbrink. This time, though, in a better spot, actually having to dodge a little bit because there was a car crashed. That was Wilkins against the wall, I believe that may have been. Yes, indeed it was, who's already used a fast repair.
Yeah, not a good race for Wilkins, just too much throttle out of turn 7. That looped him around, but I don't think he got any new damage because of that. He can continue, but like you said, that doesn't help Walstra. And all the momentum that he had gained in the previous laps, he kind of immediately loses to Ilbrink.
Indeed here. But of course, as these drivers make their way around the racetrack, let's take a look at what P5 has in store, because guess what? That's what Coulthard has been able to reel on in the 5th spot on the racetrack. Royce again has been falling off by a few tenths of a second, 4/10 gain last time by, but the 28 and now has the draft.
Yeah, Sam Coulthard is really happy. He is now in the draft, going towards 5. This actually might be a great position for Sam Coulthard as well to take a pit stop, because instead of spending a lot of time trying to make those overtakes, and of course as a driver you want to make those overtakes, but it might be more beneficial to maybe take a pit stop if you can right now, so you can, instead of wasting a lot of time trying to fight your way past him, you can do it in the pit stop. He takes a different line through the first 2 corners, almost bunches it into Jim. There's lap traffic in front of that as well, so it's very hectic here for Sam Kuijten, who goes now to the second chicane. Colin Spork in front of him is also stuck behind lap traffic, so that also will play a factor. Colin still cannot go by him. There will be lap traffic on the right-hand side for both these drivers now. Sam Kuijten taking a different line. He saw that lap car on the right-hand side, so he took a completely different line, way wider than the 2 cars in front. That helped him to get the speed, but you can see Colin Spork, he lost a lot of momentum because of that, and now Jim Herdroyce is the one who tries an attack.
Reason why they had so much difficulty in part 2 is I don't think Dan Hardig realized he just lost his rear tire behind these cars. Spork now playing defensive line. Herdroyce trying to take the long way around. Here comes the run from Counter. Making a 3-car battle now for the 4th spot of the racetrack. Spork trying to break up the slipstream again. 2 with the run now, this time to the left side of the track. Giving a bit of a squeeze, trying to fall behind, still is Counter in the fight now for 4th spot.
Herdroyce still on the outside. He had a beautiful run out of the hairpin, though way wider than the car in front, and that gave him more momentum, but he's not quick enough to put it side by side and past him. All through the final chicane, all bunched up towards each other. It doesn't seem like anyone has the momentum now to try and overtake it. Colin Spork is under threat of Jim Herdroyce. He needed a dive bomb through turn 1 to really put it side by side there. Doesn't happen. Sam Kuijten takes again a wide line. He doesn't trust the car in front, it seems like. He knows that he's quicker through turn 2 and takes a wide line every time to not bump into the car in front.
They got Vilkins up the road, though. The 33rd place car already 4 laps down, having to let them go hard. Able to keep within speed, though, are the drivers within this train. Still, once again, 3 cars within this train. Caboose still Counter for the time being. Still cannot get a run quite yet, and losing some time once again in the dirty air. Herdroyce. Every time Herdroyce has gone within a couple car lengths, heading across the stripe for a lap, he's immediately lost about 3/4 of a second, it seems.
And you can just see just now as he went through that chicane how much more comfortable Kuijten is in his car. He can clobber the curbstones way harder than the 2 cars in front. That just gives him more speed. Meanwhile, Herdroyce actually misses his braking point, and that will lose him a lot of momentum here on the straight. Kuijten, this is the best run you've had so far. 2 car lengths between him, but the problem for him is that Herdroyce also has the draft. Will the double draft help Kuijten and maybe even make it a 3-wide moment? It is Colin all the way on the right-hand side. It is Kuijten who has a lot of momentum, tries to thread the needle, but he gets cut off. Collins still on the inside. Herdroyce doesn't have the speed to put it around the outside, but he has a big oversteer moment out of the final corner.
Heck of a battle. 21 estimated laps to go for these drivers, this time side by side. Herdroyce trying to hug the bottom. Here comes the run once again in the chicane. Counter takes away 5th position. Now can he get 4th is the next question. Closing on it in, and tons of traffic up the road this time. 2-3 lap cars just up the group. Spork wanting drivers to move. There goes one of them. That's Reitzma moving right out of the way, just out of the space. Losing some time, though, is Herdroyce trying to make sure he keeps off that car. They do have Beers up the road. Next car then is De Haas just up the road. Then some clean space for this battle to break through. Counter. Once again, good run. Here comes the lap traffic. Beers and the rest of the train still trying to get through. They also gained some time on Hodgraf with the help of the traffic. Moving to the side, here comes Counter for the chance for 4th position. Spork trying to stay on the right side of the track. Counter trying to carry the momentum on the left side. Side by side, backs off the gas, trying to force the mistakes from Spork. Spork holds the power. Counter with the run still. Able to take advantage despite the dirty air. Halfway on the clock in the next 30 seconds. And Counter with the send. Off into the grass again. Another mistake in 1 and 2. That's the second mistake in that part of the racetrack today. This time, no course cut penalty, but does lose the chance for 4th for the time being. Sam Coulter once again trying to make the run work again, this time through 5, 6, and 7. Off towards 8 and 9 once again. Once again, slipstream being broken by Spark to the right side of the track. Spark, not a good run through 8 and 9. Bit of a checkup with the dirty air and Coulter once again. More traffic just up the road once again, this time to Haas, as mentioned, just off the track. Still a 3-car train, everyone near nose wing to front wing. Spark again tries to hold the right side. Coulter back on the left side of the track. The Lotus machine trying to hold on to the right side. Left side, Coulter with a major send. Able to make the pass. Give forward position to Sam Coulter. Just past halfway on the clock. Johan, what a pass. And that was coming for Sam with that momentum. The question now is going to be, can he close in the gap now? 2.1 seconds to Hongraf before they get towards pit stops. The back half of the field has had to come in for service. Couple drivers are separating 3rd place and 4th place. The Haas is the next car to deal with. Then you have Drouse. That is the next lap car up the road. Of note, the 32 of Mike Luke has elected to pit. He was in 12th position. Lap traffic makes a mistake to move out of the way. Coulter with a better run still. Either way, that time through Lepango. Down the casino straight. Coming up to an estimated 19-ish to go this time by. Now as these drivers work their way towards pit stop window, of course, Dutchies-Esports, for those who do not know, competes in multiple different facets of esports, in multiple different types of games and simulators. They recently had a partnership with Dark Controllers. Take 4. Dark Controllers sells awesome, high-quality, custom-made Elite controllers. Use the code Dutchies5 today to receive a 5% discount on your next order. Go to darkcontrollers.com to purchase your newest controller today. 27 minutes to go on the clock, give or take. Estimated distance about 18 laps to go this time by. Justin Prince, Johan van der Velde, along with Sean Ambrose in the director's seat today. Johan, as these drivers now work their way towards the strategy window, how do you break this on through, especially with Ilbrink continuously putting in 131.6s? He's ran away again by more than 3 seconds.
A great start from Ilbrink. He's just driving away from Walstra at the moment. We thought the gap was closing down, but that's not the case. And if Ilbrink can just continue like this, he has the opportunity to choose whenever he wants to come in. I think that moment is coming soon, though, because you don't want to wait too much time as well. Maybe get into problems with your strategy like that. He just has the opportunity to choose whenever he wants to come in now. Luckily for him, also driving away from P3, so he has nothing to worry about. And actually, when he comes out, he might not even be that far down the order as well.
Indeed, the question is going to be, when do some of these drivers peel in? As mentioned, some have ducked down. Only 12 have not had to come in for at least one pit stop in this race, whether for fast repair or scheduled stops. Now, the interesting thing, though, is going to be this train. 4th, 5th, and 6th that is slowly closing on into 3rd position because one of the Dutchies-Esports drivers, and Hongraf, has been falling off. Last time by, the 24 ran a 132.1. The drivers behind them were all in the 131s. We'll have to see how this all plays out here, Johan, especially with the strategy card still up for grabs.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think that Walstra maybe is just waiting for the moment that he comes into the pits as well. Maybe he actually is trying to save some fuel as well to try and get some lap time that way. But at the moment, both those drivers don't have to worry about any of the other drivers behind them. They are over 13 seconds in front of the rest of the podium positions. Kuitert will just be closing down Handgraaf now, and that will be a really exciting battle. And I think that Kuitert actually wants to seal the deal on track. He has been doing that with the drivers behind him as well, and it just feels better as a driver if you can make the overtake on track instead of in the pits.
Of note, a few drivers have finished off their days. We mentioned Larry in the 1 car, broke off part of his tires. The 97 also done, the 98 also off the racetrack. The 32 has now been off the track for a lengthy service as well after his scheduled stop just 2 laps ago. So once again, to recap your top 5, Airbrink, Wallstra, Handgraaf, Kuitert, along with Spork inside the top 5. Those drivers covered by 20 seconds on the intervals on the track, with Spork at the back end of that top 5. Still keeping within drafting range, but still hasn't been able to keep as fast as pace as the 28. The question's going to be how the pace will hold up once he loses that drafting dirty air up the front.
Yeah, one of the drivers that just connected was one of the drivers that we saw a lot at the beginning of the broadcast, Niels Langeveld, after his crash. It seems like he didn't feel comfortable in his new car and he has thrown in the towels. A few retirements are out there, but most of the drivers are still driving around even after that big lap 1 crash that we saw. But up top, it is indeed Stan Heidgraaf in P3 and Sam Kuitert who are now basically giving a show. They are fighting it out for the podium positions. Colin Spork and Jim Hordros behind that. Will be sad that they lost the chance for a podium position, because it seems almost, Justin, that they're losing connection to those podium positions.
And that's got to be the important thing, is keeping within range of one of those positions to have a shot to take home one of the prizes. Remember, just the top 3 are part of the prize pool today to recoup the entry fees, mind you. Remember, €6 was the entry fee for this event today. And it's been a great event, mind you, too, Johan, because this race was held to simulate the, in real world, Canadian Grand Prix, which would have took place today, but work circumstances unable to take place today here in Montreal.
Absolutely, it's a shame that it couldn't continue, but it's good to at least have a battle like this here. Now, there's actually a nice battle happening at the moment. Joey Garvin and Danny Hoekstra are fighting with each other.
Give a bit of shout out to these drivers. They try and chug along, currently on 1 lap down, but having a pretty decent scrap for this position. Melvin's been decent speed. The Tulip Racing Machine of Hoekstra has also shown some good speed. Both of them have been fairly quick. It's just, again, what happened on the first lap put them behind the 8 ball. If they didn't have that happen, there's a chance they're fighting for the top 10 at the moment.
Another driver that we were talking about earlier in the race, Joey Alders. He's currently driving around in P7. That was one of the drivers that we've talked about as one of the contenders to move himself forward during the race. Car number 23 that we see on screen here. I think that Alders actually had a very lonesome race. He hasn't been really fighting with other drivers. 4 seconds behind P6, 7 seconds in front of P8. And at the moment, it seems like Joey Alders is slightly quicker when the car is in front are fighting. But yeah, he's just slowly trying to close down the gap to the cars in front. Pit stops are happening though, and it seems like Colin Spork is the first one on pit road.
And this is one of the first drivers inside the top 5. They have been starting to circulate in more in frequency. Remember, there were drivers who tried the undercut at 40 minutes to go on the clock. So at this point, pit window seems to be open here, and no tires. This is the call here to save an extra couple seconds to get a splash and go on the fuel.
And it's interesting to see where he actually ends up. It seems like he's just in front of the lap car of Oscar Wilkins. And this would be great for Sport because he has a lot of clean air in front of him. And he can just run his racing laps, hope that the cars that he was fighting with counter a little bit of lap traffic and then overtake them in the pits.
Question's going to be, when will the leader come down? He's been on his own much of this run as well, outside of the lap traffic. Going to the left side of the track. Is he ducking down? No, he's not. Going to stay on an extra lap or so, it looks like. Still has about 14 laps to go this time. By second also stays out of the racetrack for the time being.
Yeah,
So
and I wouldn't be surprised if Stijn Handgraaf in P3 actually comes in, because he seems to struggle a little bit. Just missed the apex in the hairpin, and you see actually he comes into his pit stop. Stijn is not feeling comfortable. Yeah, and I think he also feels the pressure of Kuiten behind him. If you, as a driver, you know that you're not quicker than the car behind you, and you see him getting closer and closer, that puts so much pressure on you. It is almost easy to just go into the pits, get your head clear, and just come out without him breathing down your neck. And it seems like Stijn Heidgraaf is doing that. Now, I'm curious though, is he going to take new tires? Because he was struggling in the hairpin, and he was losing a little bit of time. Doesn't seem like he does though. Car seems pretty planted, and he actually gets going again. So I think it's just petrol for him. Stijn Handgraaf will be able to continue. I think he's just behind Joey Alders, who actually a spinning car in front of him. That's the lap car of Berry Ingelenhoven. Gets it going again. Yeah, he's between lap traffic. That will not help Stijn, especially if you remember that Kuiten was closing down the gap.
keep in mind, remember, drivers tried the undercut strategy at 20 minutes in. They had 2-second longer pit stops for the men who took scheduled pit stops during that cycle. 10th is also coming on in. That's Omas, who we haven't mentioned too much. That's Bo Meiser. That's also coming into the pit lane now from the 11th position. So most of the drivers have come down, including now the race leader. Ilbrink is now that red and black machine coming down. Walstra also coming off and in as well. Closed in about a couple tenths of a second on the pit entry.
Yeah, it was about time that Ilbrink and Walstra come in. Meanwhile, some Kuiten at P3 also comes in. So this seems like the golden lap to make your pit stop. And actually see if Walstra is able to close down the gap to Ilbrink during the pit stop. Ilbrink misses his pit stop.
Mistake. And he's taking tires. Ilbrink, one of the first drivers to take tires. He did have the time to sacrifice. So there's that difference in 2 seconds. So he takes tires. Walstra does not, though. So here's the difficult part. Yes, Ilbrink made the mistake and lost some time and sacrificed some more, but he had the cushion to work with it. Walstra now has the difficulty of trying to keep up on much older rubber.
Yeah, and don't forget also cold tires. So let's see if Ilbrink actually is able to drive away from Walstra.
Yeah.
This might be the incentive that Walstra needed. He was dropping off a little bit, but seeing that gap from 4.5 seconds go to 1.5 seconds, that might be everything that Walstra needs to just give him a little bit of that fire again that he had at the halfway during his first stint when he was running Ilbrink down.
Trouble going on for the 28 machine. Just lost 2 different positions this time by, in fact, just had to pull in the tow truck. Unfortunate for him. He had, remember, just came out of the pits. He was one of the drivers who took tires, and right there, that's the result of cold tires, everybody.
Horrible for Sam. He was getting such a great race after recovering everything that he had lost at the beginning. Shame for him to see it end like that. But this will give a whole new incentive to the battle for P3, because we had a lot of drivers who were basically run down by Sam Kuiten and almost wanted to write Sam's name for the P3 position. But now you have Stijn Handgraaf again in P3.
Indeed, that gap was closing too. Stayed about 2 seconds and might have had the chance to brew in these final 11 or so laps. Instead, the gap is now about 5 seconds between him and Spork. So put a Spork in that battle for the time being. We'll see if Spork reinserts the battle eventually soon, though at this point. Still, though, going to be interesting to see how the rest of this race plays out here. Coming to 10 to go this time by estimated, give or take 16 minutes on the clock. 11 laps is currently the distance this past time by. At this point, how do you play this if you want to try and catch up to a podium position? Do you hope for mistakes? Or how do you try and get yourself focused up to close in enough time? Or is there even enough time for Sport?
I mean, that's a great question. I don't think that there's any tools left anymore. You don't have pit stops anymore. You don't have fuel saving anymore that can bring you anything. Right now, it's just a sprint race until the end. And if you have a 5-second deficit, it's a 5-second deficit. There's nothing to hide behind. So of course there might be lap traffic, but that's not something that you can go for. And I think if Sport wants to go for that podium position, he needs to run Handgraaf down as quick as he can and as soon as he can. The gap seems to go down to 4.5 seconds though, so maybe Sport, once he crosses start-finish line, we can see he's actually a bit quicker than Handgraaf, but he actually missed the apex there of the hairpin by quite a bit. Maybe that's his racing line, but I don't think that's quicker. And yeah, we just have to see if that will help him get closer to P3.
Battles, meanwhile, are starting to brew a little bit. This is amongst teammates, mind you. Fell different streaming corporations causes a Twitch, YouTube for the driver behind, and Perry. We'll see how these two fare out here amongst these teammates. This again for 16th position. Both of these drivers have gained positions from the start, and both of these drivers had to take faster periods, meaning they are a lap down for the time being.
Yeah, Peter de Heus has just come out of the pits again, so maybe he is also struggling with slightly colder tires. That will help Perry Oosterveer behind him to close down the gap. He gets closer through turn 1, or towards turn 1, but not close enough to put it side by side. But with 1 or 2 car lengths between them, I think that Peter de Heus in front will feel the pressure of the car behind it. Especially if their teammates just said, like, that's a battle that you want to win. If they're friends, if they know each other in real life, that's a battle that you sure want to be on top of.
Speaking of teammates, have you ever wanted a customized Dutchies-Esports jersey? Well, you have that opportunity to do so. Fans can go to jomisports.nl/Dutchies-Esports to order jerseys with the ability to customize your gamertag and name in 2 different beautiful colors. Once again, go to jomisports.nl/Dutchies-Esports to buy your newest esports jersey today. Would you like to wear one of those, Johan, if you had the chance?
Absolutely, absolutely. I just want my complete name on that instead of a game tag, but they look beautiful. I want to go for the white one.
You can always put your last name on as the gamer tag and your first name in the orange text.
That sounds beautiful. That sounds like a designer making choices there.
Found one person who's going to make an order after this race today, but still, these fellow teammates in the trackside cars still scrapping a little bit and beating on the patient side, it seems. Of note, 2 DNFs now on the racetrack. Unfortunate now for the 777. That is Hamilcore, who had some trouble. Also mention our Mygen. Also, his spotter also off the racetrack in this respective event. Well, 10 laps to go or so at this point. How do you, again, what's going through your head as a driver now after already more than 50 minutes just about of racing coming up?
I don't really know if these drivers are used to these endurance. It's not really an endurance event though, but having a 1 hour race like this is, for example, longer than you have an official, and you have to be mentally very strong to keep the concentration up for these 60 minutes. Now, you've seen drivers make mistakes in the end of their first stint or in the beginning of the second stint, and that's maybe a bit of that as well. Just mental fatigue, loss of concentration that spins them around and ruins their race. So that's just as much of a factor as just being quick out on track. And I think that drivers like Handgraaf, like Spork, like Hertroys, all drivers that are still in for the podium position, really have to be mentally strong in the end of the race. Hertroys actually is one of the drivers that was making mistakes a few laps ago and lost a bunch of time when he cut the turn 7 chicane, and that allows Joey Alders to get closer and closer on the gap for P5.
That gap's about 3 seconds right now. You can see him a bit in the backdrop. Also, you've seen in the right-hand corner of the screen, Ilbrink is currently in flying mode. So some of these drivers are setting their fastest lap times, and this was to be expected. Track is cooling down just a touch bit now. And also remember, the more fuel that burns out, the faster these cars tend to go.
Yeah, Paul Ilbrink is really quick at the moment, and he's trying to go around some lap traffic. Davy Reitsma, he just passed. Fabian Bouwmeester will be in front of him. And just to emphasize the speed that Ilbrink has, look at the tracker on the left side of your screen. There are currently only 10 cars left on the lead lap, while Fabian Bouwmeester is ripe for the picking. I think there will be 1 or 2 laps before Ilbrink has also passed him. So basically the whole field, bar 8 cars, will be led by Ilbrink. That's just amazing pace that he has here today, and he's been dominating. Of course, at some points we were thinking maybe Walstra has the pace to close down the gap or put in some pressure, but Ilbrink has been dominating, and he could even make a small mistake in the pit stop, missing his pit box. It doesn't bother him. He hasn't lost the lead, and it's just very impressive what he shows here.
10th place just up the road, by the way. Well, Meeser, we'll see if he forces the leader to dare to be different, as the front wing says on that 7 machine. They also have the traffic of the 97 up the road as well. That's 33rd position once again. That is Verhey, who has been having a rough race, unfortunate for him, who tries to move out of the way. Here's the view from the rear wing, and tries to let up the brakes. The 97 locks up the brakes to let everybody go. It slides off to the escape route in turn 6, but the leader moves to the right side, heading off to turn 8.
Yeah, I think Paul Ilbrink has a clear mind at this point of the race. He knows that the gap between him and Walstra is growing, and when a driver in front of them, of course, it raises in front of you makes a mistake. Of course, it raises your heart pressure a little bit, but I think that Paul Ilbrink has this one comfortably in his pocket. Less comfortably in the pocket is the battle for P5, though. We mentioned it before. Hartroys and Joey Alders. Those two drivers are not nose to tail at the moment. If you put the camera on car number 2, there's around 2-3 seconds still between them. But Alders seems to be right on the money between himself and Hartroys. 2/10 slower last time around, but Hartroys seemed to be struggling, making a few mistakes. So I hope that Joey Alders can give us a battle for P5.
Speaking of battles, bit of a hornet's nest around 15th on back at the moment. It's where the Haas has been able to cycle on him out, and this is where the teammates are. Just made the pass, by the way, De Haas did, to get by that blue and white machine. Here's a look. You can see the mistake. That is Engelenhoven who made the mistake off the corner, got a good run, and De Haas was able to make the pass just before they got into turn 8.
Yeah, just too happy on the throttle there, Engelenhoven, just had to slow down a little bit, lift off the throttle, and that ruined all his momentum. So that means that he loses 1 position, but it might be 2 positions because Perry Oosterveer is having a great run, sends it on the inside in the final chicane, gets it done before they reach the first apex. So 2 positions lost for Barry Engelenhoven this lap.
Able to pick him all off. Mind you, the 11 machine did take the tires on the pit stop. De Haas did not. And they've been near dead even pace, mind you, with the difference in the tire compounds and the decisions of said tires. Not making too much of the difference there in terms of the follow-off total. Also of note, Sam Coulthard has now officially DNF'd from this event. He is now done for the race. Remember, was in contention for a top 5. There are now 9 cars on the lead lap. This is Walstra in second position, by the way, who is losing time on those older tires. He's now went from 1.7 seconds back, Johan, to 5 seconds on the dot back.
Yeah, and it also seems like Walstra isn't as comfortable in this second stint as he was in the first stint. There might be some tire wear happening as well. But while in the first stint he was comfortably doing 131s basically the whole stint, in the second stint it's being off and on 132s, and that's not the speed that we saw earlier in the race from him. In front of him, Fabian Baumeister is making a small mistake, but it seems like Tom Walstra doesn't have the pace anymore.
There was a change for 5th position, you may have noticed on the left side of your screen, though. That's because Hartroys did a full 360 spin just about in Lepango last time by. That lost him the spot, and Joey Alders is now inside the top 5. That was again because of the mistake in turn 10 where he lost the back end tires. Here's a look at it on the GSRC replay, and watch the corner entry from the yellow car.
Yeah, it went. He tried to save it, and it was good for him that he just kept the throttle on and immediately spun it around. Otherwise, he would have lost a little bit more. He had to do a 3-point turn there, but he went. And this is what we said before. Jim Hartroys didn't seem that comfortable on his current tires, and it finally caught up to him. So it's Alders to P5 and Hartroys to P6.
Hartroys in decent position, pending any mistakes, though, to hold on to the position, though. Neil Heckens, we haven't mentioned his name, is in 7th. Leader, though, Ilbrink still quickest driver on the racetrack, though, in the 131.1s at the moment. Here's the look, meanwhile, at Neil. And Neil, we haven't mentioned his name too much. Someone that's really strong in some of the endurance races across iRacing, has had a very quiet run, started 14th up to 7th.
I mean, that's what you mentioned, though. It's an endurance race, and if you have a lot of experience in endurance races, then a 1-hour event in a Formula 3 race, that will give you something extra if you're able to concentrate for such an amount of time and just profit from the mistakes that other people make. And you can see that, like we just saw, winning 7 positions so far in the race. If Jim Hartroys makes another mistake, Neil Heckens will be there to even pick up another position. So good outing from Neil so far, and rightly so in the top 10.
For those that recognize the name, that is the man that is also part of Neo Endurance in that respective series. So there's also where that endurance speed comes into play. Just up the road, a bit of bumpy cars. as that is a bit of trouble for the 99. Nearly broke off the wheel. Does have wing damage, though. That is, again, the battle for 18th, scrapping crazily.
And we can actually maybe go to a replay of that, because there was actually a nice battle for P18. Danny Hoekstra behind Martin Brouwers there. Danny with a great run over the Casino Straight, going to the inside, everything going great, but he just brakes slightly too late. Clubbers the second apex into the wall of champions, and then behind him he will be hit. You can see it here in the draft, going to the inside. Brakes later, but too late, and there just hits the wall hard, and there's nothing that Martijn could have done after that. He just ran into the back of him.
Could have been much worse in that situation, to say the very least, but Hoekstra still is the quicker of the two cars, has now pulled nearly 2 seconds, and has a chance to get up to 17, based on the pace. By the way, Ilbrink still setting the fastest laps in the entire race, once again on those fresher tires. 1:30.9, the first 1:30 set by anyone today.
Yeah, incredible pace from Paul Ilbrink, and that's maybe also the difference between taking new tires and not taking new tires, what we saw in the pit stop. Just driving away from Tom Balstra now, who, like I said, just doesn't seem as comfortable. He seems to have recouped himself in his pace. He's now again in the 31s, but he's not doing the pace like he did as consistently as in the first stint.
You gotta remember, though, this is a guy that has competed in world championships in open wheel road course racing competition with Radicals Online. So the pace is there. The pace has also been fairly there for Wallstra, but not as quick. 131.8, I should rather say, on the older tires. That's only 0.4 of fall off, but that's not going to be quick enough, obviously, to keep up with the fresher tires up in front.
Behind him, Stijn Handgraaf in P3 is just really consolidating that position. We were talking about the opportunity of Colin Spork or Joey Aldis closing down the gap, but it doesn't really seem to happen. Still around 5 seconds between himself and P4, and he's just right on the pace that he needs to be to make sure that he finishes on the podium position.
So two of the Dutchies-Esports sponsored machines looking to try and make it a 2-3 on the podium. Just have to keep it nice and clean for the upcoming next few laps or so. Under 3 minutes are left on the clock. About 3 laps or so to go in the race. So at this point, as long as they don't make mistakes, they're in comfortable positions with a lot of space around them. Keep in mind, Colin Spork is in 4th if anything happens to 2nd and 3rd.
Ooh, battle happening between P17 and P18, Darry Hoekstra and Engelenhoven. Seems like Hoekstra actually has the position. This time he doesn't hit the wall. Gets by quite well. Barry Engelenhoven relegated 1 position. So that was one of the battles that we see. Barry Engelenhoven immediately under pressure by Neil Hackens, but that's not for a position. That's trying to put a lap between those two cars. Neil Hackens seems to have the inside now and should be able to get it before the turn 4 chicane.
Indeed, given some space, and there goes the lead lap car getting some space. Neil Hackens now, one of 8 drivers still in the lead lap here in these closing stages on the clock. Again, lap time's about 1 minute and 31 seconds right now for the race leader. Leader's going to be very close with the amount of time left on the clock, because just crossing the start and finish line this time at the minute 27. They'll show 2 laps to go in the upper corner of the screen, but there is a chance this may be the final lap. But the problem thing is, the reason it says the 2 to go is the timing of it. If you get too close to the start and finish line for that potential last lap, there is the chance that you'll get the white flag coming this upcoming time by, if not checkered. We'll have to see.
How about we put the camera on P12 for one moment? Danny Raats and Martijn Versleeuwen. Martijn Versleeuwen is in front of those two. There's a nice battle actually that is heating up over the last few laps, because Danny Raats, the car behind that you see now from the rear wing of Martijn, is closing down the gap. A few tenths every lap. Ooh, actually touches the wall a little bit there, and I think that might have ended the battle. Yeah.
Getting confirmation that this is indeed the last lap with the timing. 33 seconds are currently on the clock as he tries to close up and away. For Paul Ilbrink, it's been a dominant performance. Led every single lap, was perfect from the opening jump. For the Radicals Online driver and the former driver in one of the iRacing World Championships, he'll come away with the top prize. He is the F3 Master of Canada. Paul Ilbrink off the final corners wins it at Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in a dominant performance in Montreal. Tom Wallstraw, second position, about 8 seconds back, celebrates. A strong performance for him and his fellow teammate. Hongroff rounds out the top 3. A bit of smoke and trouble in front of them. That was the crash involving 12th position. Able to keep it clean, but still comes away with a third step on the podium.
And let's go to the replay of that, because there was a battle that we mentioned before between Danny Raats and Martijn Versleeuwen. We see the replay there. It is Versleeuwen on the inside. So remember, Versleeuwen will be on the inside. Danny Raats are on the outside. Danny Raats has a great run. It tries to basically get a position on the track on the apex that is not there. Just, I have to say, maybe steers in a little bit too strong and spins together with Versleeuwen towards the World Champions there.
Here's an aero look from the chopper cam. You can see, tried to do the move we've seen a couple times, but didn't execute it the same way as others did. Backed it up a little bit after committing to the overbrake, and then diving it on down into the car on the inside. Hard hit coming to the stripe, but mostly everybody has crossed the stripe. Paul Ilbrink, a dominant victory today in the 10. Post-race coverage is coming up after these quick breaks. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel and Dutchies-Esports, live from Circuit Gilles Villeneuve for the F3 Masters of Canada. Welcome back, everyone, to Montreal after an exciting run for the F3 Masters of Canada, organized by Dutchies-Esports today. It was a dominant performance for Paul Ilbrink today here on the Global SimRacing Channel, winning by more than 8 seconds. Tom Wallstraw came home in second spot. He is one of the drivers to keep an eye on as well in 2020 for Formula 3 overall Series Championships or official races. Hongroff finished in third to round out a 2-3 for Dutchies-Esports on the podium, with Colin Sport in fourth. Joey Alders finished in 5th today, with Hart Royce in 6th spot. Bill Heckens quietly ran in 7th spot, the Yale Endurance organizer. Center Nextenthal in P number 8. David Amasi in 9th, and Baumeiser rounded out their top 10 today, Johan.
Yeah, P11 goes to Koen Janssen, who won 6 positions during today. Well done to him. Danny Raats, he was involved in that last corner accident together with Martijn Versleeuw, where Danny gets the better position in P12. Penny Oosterveer comes home in P14, followed by Wessel den Hartog. Danny Hoekstra finishes in P16 in front of Peter de Huis. And Barry Engelenhoven, great run from him also today. 13 positions gained on track from P31 to P18. Last 2 drivers in the top 20 will be Martin Brouwers and on P20, Tom Vos.
21st position this time goes to Thiel, with Jalving in 22nd, Beers finished in 23rd, Drost in 24th, Van Eyck in 25th, Roers in 26th, Reitzma in 27th, Delange in 28th position, Vilkins in 29th, rounding out the top 30, Verhey, rest of the field. DNFs also measured this race. Unfortunate for Coulthard after being a top 5 contender and a chance to potentially steal a podium spot before a mistake after the pit stops. Mike Lute rounding out 32nd position, rest of the drivers, Himmelkorn, Landveld, along with Gill today. But the man who dominated today, Paul Ilbrink, dominating every single lap led, all 39, had the fastest lap by about a second or so. Paul, how are you feeling after such a dominant performance?
Yeah, pretty satisfied having another win in this competition. So, yeah, very happy.
Talk us through how this race was, in your opinion, for you, because you did have to deal with Wallstrup for the first part of this race in battles.
Yeah, exactly. Like it already started in qualifying because we have to start with like the high fuel load in qualifying. So I was trying to empty the tank, get new tires, and set a quicker time in there. But just after I took the new tires in qualifying, I stumbled upon an accident in final chicane. So my car was totaled. So I couldn't do like a really quick lap on low fuel. But luckily I got pole, got to drive away a little bit at the beginning. I was like slightly faster than Tom, but not by much. And yeah, I was just trying to build a big enough gap so it would be possible to do a pit stop with taking tires instead of just you staying on the old ones. And the gap was big enough with about 4 seconds, I think, or a little bit over 4 seconds. So I was opting for the tires, but then I overshot my pit box a little bit, so I had to reverse. So, but luckily the gap was just big enough to stay in the lead, and I think it showed in the end that quicker tires were like the better choice. But yeah, I wouldn't have want to try that not having track position. So I'm quite happy.
Overall, as well, you come away with the €70 grand prize for this event today. Overall, how does it feel to take part in events such as this, again, to replicate the In Real World Canadian Grand Prix, the second event organized by Dutchies-Esports in this regard?
Yeah, it's good to have a little bit of a special event like this. Having them organize it, it's like fun to participate in, and yeah, it's just nice to be able to challenge some of the quick people in here and have a good race.
With that, where do you go from here as a driver? When's the next time anyone can see you on the racetrack? Of course, mind you, a world championship competitor in these respective cars back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, indeed. It's been not been the case anymore since the end of 2018. But yeah, I'm doing the Formula Renault 3.5 usually on the Saturdays, the broadcasts, races, and just a little bit in the new Indy Pro 2000 car. It's quite fun as well. And yeah, also I'll probably racing Le Mans 24-hour again next week as well. So plenty of racing to be had.
Indeed. Anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, sure. My teammates at Radicals Online, especially my teammate Danny, who also was in this race and was a little bit unlucky getting caught up in the accident, and our partners and sponsors, Armor Center, Cranfield Simulation, Track Racer, Joe Real Time and Turn Racing, MOATF Podcast, Six Sideways, and Pixel Dust for the nice looking skins.
To quote your teammate, and this is the beauty of broadcasting in sim racing, is the chat function. Well, that was RIP, race after the start. Congratulations on your dominant race yourself.
Yeah, thanks.
Paul Brink coming home with the victory today, leading all laps today. The man who was trying to chase him all day, Tom Walstra, is standing by with Johan.
Yeah, Tom Walstra, welcome to the booth. You started the race P2. You finished the race P2. That almost sounds like it was a boring race. How was it from your perspective? Because you and Paul, it seemed like you really put in the fire to the shins at one point.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, it was a good race. Qualified on P2, finished P2, so that's great. But yeah, like you said, it was a lot of the time in yeah, no one around me other than the back markers, so I still had to yeah, be aware. But yeah, it was a fun race for me. Finished P2, so that's great. So yeah, and Paul was just a little bit faster, which is no surprise really. I'm used to being a little bit behind him, but yeah, good race.
Things that we saw during the broadcast was Paul missing his pit box in the pit stop. So it was 4.5 seconds going into the pits, 1.5 seconds coming out. What was the thought going through your mind? Because I don't think you took new tires. Was it like, this is the moment I can run them down and this is where I get the P1?
Yeah, first of all, I was waiting for Paul to go into the pits to see what his strategy was like. I already knew that I didn't want to change my tires. So yeah, when I entered the pits and I indeed saw the gap going from 4 seconds, I believe, to 2, I thought maybe it was because I entered the pit faster than him. But well, if he passed his own pit box, then yeah, makes sense that he loses some time. I was hoping to close the gap after that, but yeah, he was just a little bit too fast today.
Unfortunately. Now, one of the things that you, of course, had to deal with as well was the fact that you had a fixed setup. If you had an open setup, would you have made anything different? You were running with, I think, a high downforce setup. Would you have gone for a lower downforce to have maybe some more speed on the straights? Would it have suited you better?
I would have definitely changed the setup, but I'm not really a setup expert myself. So I think that Stijn, number 3 today, he would have changed a lot for me. And otherwise, the setup that I was running in the previous season, I would have used that one probably. But yeah, with a little bit practice, you can decently drive the setup on this track. So yeah, not really a problem for me.
Brought it home P2 in the end. Congratulations with that, with the prize, and we'll hope to see you again on the broadcast very soon.
Thank you for the broadcast. Cheers.
That's Tom Walstra coming home in P2. Now, in the meantime, Justin, I think that you've caught up with Stijn Handgraaf in P3.
Yes, indeed. Stijn, do you have a copy, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for joining us here in the broadcast booth, finishing a 2-3 for your team, Dutchies-Esports today. How are you feeling after a hard-fought P3 today?
I think this whole race day was going extremely well for the team, but also for me. Very consistent, but it was also at the same time very, very hard because this track requires your full concentration. And so every corner I was praying that don't make a mistake, especially in the last few laps with who was behind me. Let's see, I think it was Colin behind me, and we were doing the same lap times. And I had to be sure that I was consistent and didn't make any mistakes. And luckily, yeah, P3 in the end.
Now, your teammate Tom mentioned that he would have made adjustments to the car, of course, fixed setup today, if they had the option to. But mentioned he would ask your opinion specifically. What would you have changed if you had the option to, based on how the car handled today?
Okay. Well, I think the setup in general was actually pretty good for the circuit. It was a little bit loose on the end. So on the rear end, especially under in traction zones, turn 5, 6, for instance, was really hard to get the power down. So maybe anti-roll bar a little bit less stiff on the rear. Yeah, yeah, the changes that increased the traction on the rear. That's probably the go-to for me.
Now, next up for you guys, this weekend, you guys are racing in the multiple hours of racing in the French countryside in the LMP1s. What are your thoughts about that race this weekend?
Oh, I'm looking really forward for that race. It's going to be my first 24 hours of Le Mans. Already did Daytona, but I think the atmosphere around Le Mans is much better, and I think it's the ultimate race of the season.
See how you do in that as you see the rosters now up on your screen. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few moments or so. But with that, is there anyone you want to thank for being a part of this event and all the efforts you and Dutchies-Esports did for today?
Yeah, I would like to, just the whole organization, I'd like to thank them for this event, and also the broadcasters. I have to check how the broadcast went, but I think you guys did a great job. And I also just joined the new team, the new Dutchies-Esports. So I also would like to thank them for organizing this and providing the opportunity to be part of their team. Thank you.
Congratulations on the podium position. Congratulations on the Team 2-3. That's Stein Hongraf coming home in third today. Johan, your quick final thoughts after this one.
Yeah, fantastic race, especially just the skill that we've seen. We've saw great battles, drivers trying different things, different lines, and that was just great to see, but also just the dominance that we see from drivers like Tom or Paul, who really just gave us a showcase of the skill and how to control a Formula 3 car around a really tricky racetrack. Just great all around.
Did you like what you seen today here at Circuit du Jeu? Or I should rather rephrase, did you enjoy today's racing here at Circuit du Jeu? Well, this weekend, some of the drivers you've seen competing in today's virtual Canadian Grand Prix will be taking part in the full day of racing in the French countryside this weekend in this LMP1 and LMP2 classes. Go to Dutchies-Esports on Twitter to keep up with where to follow your favorite drivers to see how they fare in France. RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network, in partnership with Race Radio Show Limited, will also have broadcast coverage of Top Split action this weekend. That coverage starts at about 9 a.m. Eastern Time Saturday. We'd like to thank everyone for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Montreal. We'd also like to thank Dutchies-Esports for organizing this great event. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for a broadcast listed up on your screen. Additional thanks to Jude Lawan, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more for great work. The team and Johan and Sean. If you'd like to find out about GSRC including the upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storeandvy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to our YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. We have many upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.